Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Endeavour as the ship drifted through the cold darkness of space. The vessel had been on a routine patrol mission near the outer rim of the solar system when the communication officer suddenly straightened in his chair. Lieutenant Paul Grant turned to face the captain with wide eyes and spoke in a voice that barely controlled his excitement. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission unlike anything we have seen before. The signal is coming from outside our solar system, and it is incredibly powerful. The source appears to be artificial, and the transmission is clearly directed at Earth." Captain Morrison walked over to the communication station and studied the readings on the screen. The signal was indeed unlike anything human technology had ever detected. It carried complex patterns that suggested an advanced civilization was trying to make contact. The captain ordered his crew to begin analysis of the transmission immediately. Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's xenobiologist, worked alongside the communication team to decode the alien message. Hours passed as they struggled to understand the complex mathematical patterns and symbolic representations embedded in the transmission. Finally, the translation software began to piece together fragments of meaning. The message was formal and official in tone. It addressed the entire human species as subjects of something called the Galactic Council. The transmission declared that humanity had been observed for the past century and was now ready for integration into galactic civilization. The words sent chills through every crew member who read them. Captain Morrison immediately ordered the ship to return to Earth at maximum speed. The alien message was too important to delay. As the USS Endeavour raced toward home, the captain contacted Admiral Lisa Parker at Earth Space Command Headquarters. The admiral listened to the report with growing concern and ordered an immediate emergency session with the United Earth government. Within hours of the ship's arrival, the most important leaders on Earth gathered in the United Nations Assembly Hall. President Daniel Hayes sat at the head of the table, surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and diplomats from every major nation. The alien transmission was played for the assembled group, and the translated message filled the room with tense silence. The demands were clear and non-negotiable. Humanity was required to pay tribute to the Galactic Council in the form of 40% of Earth's natural resources, 30% of the human population for labor purposes, and complete submission of all human technology to Council oversight. The message explained that this was standard procedure for all species. Entering galactic civilization, Admiral Parker stood to address the assembly. She explained that the transmission had been verified as authentic and that it originated from a source approximately 50 light-years from Earth. The technology required to send such a powerful signal across interstellar distances was far beyond human capabilities. This meant that whoever had sent the message possessed advanced technology that humanity could not match. President Hayes asked the obvious question that everyone was thinking: what would happen if humanity refused to comply with these demands? The answer came within minutes, as if the aliens had been monitoring Earth's communications. A second transmission arrived, and this time it included a holographic projection system that materialized in the center of the assembly hall. The figure that appeared was tall and crystalline, with multiple arms and eyes that seemed to shift color as it spoke. The being introduced itself as High Arbiter Zexthal, representative of the Galactic Council. The alien's voice was translated by the same system that had decoded the original message. High Arbiter Zexthal explained that the Council had been monitoring human development for over a century. Humanity's recent achievement of faster-than-light travel had triggered automatic protocols that required immediate integration into the galactic hierarchy. The High Arbiter continued to explain that the tribute system was not punishment, but rather a necessary contribution to galactic stability. Every species that joined the Council was required to contribute resources and labor to maintain the vast interstellar civilization. Those who refused faced immediate military action from the Council's enforcement fleets. President Hayes found his voice and asked how many species were part of this galactic civilization. The answer was staggering. Over 3,000 different species across the galaxy had been integrated into the Council's system. Each one had accepted the tribute requirements and submitted to Council authority. None had ever refused. The high arbiter's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with what might have been amusement. It explained that resistance was not only futile but had never been attempted. The Council's military forces had never faced serious opposition because all species eventually recognized the benefits of galactic citizenship. Dr. Foster, who had been studying the aliens' behavior and communication patterns, noticed something interesting. Despite the High Arbiter's confident words, there were subtle signs of uncertainty in its body language and vocal patterns. The alien seemed to be following a script rather than speaking from experience. The High Arbiter concluded its presentation by giving humanity exactly 72 hours to provide a formal response. The Council expected either complete acceptance of the tribute terms or a counterproposal that would lead to negotiations. Military resistance would result in the immediate deployment of enforcement fleets that would pacify Earth and impose Council rule by force. As the holographic projection faded, the assembly hall erupted in urgent discussions. Some leaders advocated for immediate acceptance of the Council's demands, arguing that humanity had no choice but to submit to superior technology. Others called for negotiations that might reduce the tribute requirements to more acceptable levels. President Hayes listened to the debates but said nothing. He was thinking about Dr. Foster's observations and the implications of what the High Arbiter had revealed. If no species had ever refused the Council's demands, then the aliens had no experience dealing with resistance. This might be humanity's only advantage. General Carlos Rodriguez, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, approached the president with preliminary military assessments. Earth's defenses were primitive compared to what the Council likely possessed, but humanity had proven resourceful in past conflicts. The general believed that Earth's military could at least make any invasion costly for the aliens. As the 72-hour deadline approached, President Hayes made a decision that would surprise everyone. Instead of calling for more meetings or extended negotiations, he announced that he would personally deliver humanity's response to the Galactic Council. The message would be broadcast across all frequencies to ensure that every council world would receive it. The president's advisors urged him to reconsider, but Hayes had made up his mind. He believed that humanity's response needed to be clear, direct, and unmistakably human. The aliens expected either submission or negotiation, but they were about to receive something entirely different. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the galaxy forever. Captain Jake Morrison paced the bridge of the USS Endeavour as his crew worked frantically to analyze every piece of data from the alien transmission. The ship had become the center of humanity's intelligence-gathering operation, with scientists and military experts working around the clock to understand what they were facing. Dr. Amy Foster hunched over her workstation, studying the High Arbiter's holographic appearance and behavioral patterns. Something about the alien's presentation bothered her, but she could not quite identify what it was. The creature had spoken with authority and confidence, yet there were subtle inconsistencies in its body language that suggested uncertainty. Lieutenant Paul Grant monitored additional transmissions from the Council, hoping to gather more intelligence about their capabilities and intentions. The aliens seemed to be broadcasting similar messages to other star systems, though the content was different. Some messages appeared to be routine administrative communications between Council worlds on Earth. President Daniel Hayes met with his closest advisors in the secure conference room beneath the White House. The room was filled with the tension of impending crisis as military leaders, scientists, and diplomats debated humanity's options. Most of the discussion centered on finding ways to negotiate with the Council or minimize the tribute requirements. General Carlos Rodriguez spread detailed reports across the conference table, outlining Earth's military capabilities and defensive options. The assessment was sobering, but not entirely hopeless. Human military technology was primitive compared to what the Council likely possessed, but Earth's forces had advantages that might prove useful in a conflict. Admiral Lisa Parker joined the meeting via secure video link from Space Command headquarters. She reported that every human vessel in space had been recalled to Earth's orbit, creating a defensive fleet of nearly 200 ships. The vessels were mostly scientific and commercial craft, but many could be quickly converted for military use. Dr. Rachel Murphy, Earth's leading physicist, presented her analysis of the alien technology demonstrated in the Council's transmissions. The holographic projection system alone represented advances that were decades ahead of human science. However, she noted that the aliens seemed to rely heavily on standardized protocols and established procedures. President Hayes listened to each report carefully, asking pointed questions about humanity's chances in a direct confrontation. The answers were not encouraging, but they revealed something important about human nature that the Council might not understand. Unlike other species, humans had a long history of fighting against overwhelming odds. Back on the USS Endeavour, Dr. Foster made a breakthrough in her analysis of the alien communications. Hidden within the formal language and official protocols were subtle signs that the Council was not as unified or confident as they appeared. The High Arbiter's presentation had included micro-expressions and vocal patterns that suggested nervousness. Captain Morrison studied Dr. Foster's findings with growing interest. If the aliens were uncertain about humanity's response, it might indicate that they had limited experience with resistance. The Council's own messages revealed that they expected either immediate submission or negotiation, but never outright defiance. The captain immediately transmitted these findings to Earth, where President Hayes and his advisors reviewed the intelligence with renewed hope. The possibility that the Council was unprepared for resistance opened new strategic options that had not been considered before. As the 72-hour deadline approached, world leaders urged President Hayes to begin formal negotiations with the Council. The European Union proposed offering reduced tribute payments in exchange for gradual integration into galactic civilization. The Asian Federation suggested technological exchanges that might benefit both sides. However, President Hayes found himself thinking about a different approach entirely. Throughout human history, the most powerful responses to tyranny had often been the simplest ones. Sometimes a clear statement of principle was more effective than complex negotiations or military threats. General Rodriguez presented the final military assessment to the president's inner circle. Earth's defenses could not prevent a determined invasion, but they could make any attack extremely costly for the aliens. More importantly, human military doctrine emphasized adaptability and unconventional tactics that might confuse enemies accustomed to predictable responses. Dr. Foster's continued analysis of the alien communications revealed additional interesting details. The Council's messages to other star systems followed identical patterns, suggesting that they used the same approach with every species they encountered. This standardized process might be effective against civilizations that thought in similar ways, but humans were notoriously unpredictable. President Hayes made his decision during a quiet moment in the Oval Office, away from the chaos of emergency meetings and urgent briefings. He realized that humanity's response needed to reflect their true nature rather than attempting to match alien expectations. The Council expected either fear-based submission or calculated negotiation, but they were about to encounter something entirely different. The President called for a simple recording setup to be installed in the Oval Office. No elaborate production or complex diplomatic language would be needed for humanity's response. The message would be direct, clear, and unmistakably human in its simplicity. As news crews and government officials gathered for the historic broadcast, President Hayes reviewed his notes one final time. The speech he had prepared was unlike any presidential address in history. It contained no lengthy explanations, no diplomatic qualifiers, and no attempts to soften the message for alien sensibilities. The cameras began rolling as President Hayes sat behind his desk, looking directly into the lens with calm determination. His voice was steady and clear as he spoke the words that would be broadcast across the galaxy. The message was transmitted on every frequency that could reach the Council worlds, ensuring that every alien civilization would hear humanity's response. The simplicity of the message shocked everyone who heard it. Instead of the complex diplomatic response that the Council expected, President Hayes delivered a single word that carried the weight of human history and the promise of human resistance. That word was transmitted across the galaxy with perfect clarity, leaving no room for misunderstanding or misinterpretation. The immediate reaction from the Council was stunned silence. No species in galactic history had ever responded to the tribute demands with such directness. The aliens had protocols for handling submission and procedures for managing negotiations, but they had no experience with outright defiance. High Arbiter Zexthal received the human response in the council chambers, where representatives from 3,000 species gathered to witness humanity's integration into galactic civilization. The aliens' crystalline form seemed to flicker with confusion as the single word echoed through the vast hall. The word that President Hayes had spoken was simple, direct, and completely human in its stubborn defiance. It carried no explanations, offered no compromises, and left no room for negotiation. The message was clear to every alien who heard it, and it would change the galaxy forever. That word was simply and powerfully stated, no. The single word echoed through the council chambers like a thunderclap in a silent cathedral. High Arbiter Zexthal stood frozen at the center of the vast hall, his crystalline form flickering with colors that had never been seen before. The representatives from 3,000 species watched in stunned silence as they processed what they had just heard. No species in the history of galactic civilization had ever simply said no to the Council's demands. The word itself was so alien to their understanding of how integration worked that many representatives needed their translation devices to confirm they had heard correctly. The concept of outright refusal was not part of any protocol or procedure that existed in Council records. Keeper Mordek, the ancient leader of the Council's oldest member species, slowly rose from his seat in the high gallery. His voice carried the weight of millennia as he spoke to the assembled representatives. Never in his long life had he witnessed such a direct challenge to Council authority. The human response had created a situation that no existing law or tradition could address. High Arbiter Zexthal struggled to regain his composure as urgent communications flooded in from Council worlds across the galaxy. The human message had been broadcast on every frequency, ensuring that billions of beings throughout the Empire had heard humanity's defiant response. The implications were staggering and potentially catastrophic for Council authority. Back on Earth, President Daniel Hayes sat quietly in the Oval Office as his advisors rushed to assess the immediate consequences of his historic declaration. The president had known that his simple response would shock the aliens, but he had not fully anticipated the chaos it would create throughout the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison received urgent orders to position the USS Endeavor at the edge of the solar system, where it could serve as an early warning system for any Council military response. The ship's crew worked frantically to upgrade their sensors and weapons systems, knowing that they would likely be humanity's first line of defense. Dr. Amy Foster intercepted dozens of alien communications as Council worlds struggled to understand what had just happened. The transmissions revealed confusion, uncertainty, and something that surprised her even more. Many of the messages contained what appeared to be expressions of admiration for humanity's courage. The Council's immediate response was predictably authoritarian. High Arbiter Zexthal demanded that the enforcement fleets be mobilized immediately to deal with the human rebellion. However, his demand met unexpected resistance from other Council members who wanted to understand how such a response was even possible. Commander Veltar of the Council's enforcement fleet received orders to prepare for immediate deployment to the human solar system. The veteran commander had led countless pacification campaigns against primitive species, but something about this assignment troubled him. Never before had he been ordered to attack a species that had simply refused to negotiate. As news of humanity's response spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen on subjugated worlds. Species that had been under Council rule for centuries started to whisper about the humans who had said no. The word itself became a symbol of resistance that many beings had never imagined possible. On the mining world of Kelros Prime, The enslaved Tarathi workers stopped their daily labor to discuss what they had heard. For the first time in generations, they began to question why they continued to accept their servitude. The concept of refusing authority was so foreign to their experience that many could not even understand how it was possible. Dr. Foster's analysis of the intercepted communications revealed that the Council's unity was fracturing. Several member species were openly questioning the tribute system and demanding explanations for why compliance was mandatory. The simple act of saying no had planted seeds of doubt throughout the Galactic Empire. President Hayes met with General Carlos Rodriguez to discuss Earth's defensive preparations. The general reported that human military forces were being positioned around key strategic locations, but he emphasized that their best hope lay in unconventional tactics that might confuse the aliens. Standard military doctrine would be useless against superior technology. The first sign of the Council's military response came 12 hours after humanity's defiant message. Long-range sensors detected a series of small, fast-moving objects approaching the solar system from multiple directions. Captain Morrison identified them as automated scout probes designed to gather intelligence about human military capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Ben Walsh, the USS Endeavour's tactical officer, proposed an aggressive response to the approaching scouts. Instead of trying to hide Earth's defenses, he suggested using the encounter to demonstrate human unpredictability. The plan was risky but might give the Council something to think about. The first engagement between human and Council forces occurred near the orbit of Neptune. 3 Council scout probes encountered a single human patrol vessel, the USS Defiance, commanded by Captain Susan Carter. The battle was brief but revealed important information about both sides' capabilities. Captain Carter's ship was outgunned and outmaneuvered by the alien probes, but her crew's willingness to use desperate tactics surprised the Council observers. When conventional weapons failed, the humans deliberately rammed their damaged ship into one of the probes, destroying both vessels. The sacrifice was tactically sound but emotionally shocking to the aliens. The Council's response to this engagement revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. High Arbiter Zexthal interpreted the ramming attack as evidence of human irrationality rather than strategic thinking. The aliens could not comprehend why any species would deliberately sacrifice valuable resources for tactical advantage. Commander Veltar reviewed the battle reports with growing concern. His automated probes had been designed to gather intelligence, while remaining safely out of range of primitive weapons. The human willingness to sacrifice their own vessel to destroy a Council probe suggested a level of determination that he had never encountered before. Dr. Foster's continued monitoring of Council communications revealed increasing discord among the member species. The human response had exposed weaknesses in the tribute system that many aliens had never questioned. Several worlds were experiencing civil unrest as their populations began to ask why compliance was necessary. The most significant development came from an unexpected source. On the industrial world of Vexen 7, the local population had actually stopped working entirely. They sent a message to the Council using the same simple format that humanity had employed. Their message contained only one word, broadcast across the galaxy with perfect clarity. The Vexonians had said no within hours. Similar messages began arriving from other worlds throughout the Council's empire. The concept of refusal was spreading like wildfire through civilizations that had never imagined such a possibility. The human response had become a galactic revolution that threatened the very foundation of Council authority. High Arbiter Zexthal realized that humanity's simple word had created a crisis that could destroy the entire galactic order. The situation required immediate and decisive action before the rebellion spread beyond control. The enforcement fleets would have to move quickly to crush the human resistance and restore order to the galaxy, but deep in the Council archives, Keeper Mordak was discovering something that would change everything. Ancient records revealed that the tribute system had not always existed, and that the Council's authority was not as absolute as they had claimed. The humans had unknowingly exposed a truth that had been hidden for millennia. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, The massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion as the Council's enforcement fleet prepared to jump to the human solar system. 200 warships formed the largest military force ever assembled. For a single pacification mission, yet something about this deployment felt different from all the others he had commanded. The fleet's composition represented the military might of dozens of Council species, each contributing their most advanced vessels to demonstrate unified galactic power. Veltar had used similar forces to crush rebellions on primitive worlds, but those conflicts had always followed predictable patterns. The humans were proving to be disturbingly unpredictable. Reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. As more worlds followed humanity's example, the Calathi had stopped mining operations on 17 planets. The Zorvak had refused to deliver their quarterly food shipments, and the Deshan Collective had simply gone silent. The word no was spreading faster than the Council's ability to contain it. Hi. Arbiter Zexvo-S orders to the enforcement fleet were clear and urgent. The human rebellion had to be crushed completely and publicly to prevent further defections. The entire galaxy would witness what happened to species that refused Council authority. There could be no mercy or negotiation with the humans on Earth. Admiral Lisa Parker coordinated the planet's desperate defensive preparations from Space Command headquarters. Every available vessel had been recalled to Earth's orbit, creating a defensive fleet of nearly 300 ships. Most were converted civilian craft, but human ingenuity had transformed them into weapons of war. Dr. Rachel Murphy worked around the clock with teams of scientists to develop new weapons and defensive systems. The breakthrough came when she realized that human technology's greatest advantage was its adaptability. While Council technology was superior, it was also standardized and predictable. Human systems could be modified and improved in ways that alien engineers would never expect. Captain Jake Morrison's damaged USS Endeavour limped back to Earth carrying crucial intelligence about Council military capabilities. The ship's encounters with alien scouts had revealed important weaknesses in Council technology and tactics. The aliens relied heavily on automated systems and standardized battle protocols that could be exploited. Lieutenant Commander Ben Walsh presented his analysis of Council military doctrine to Earth's defense planners. The aliens fought like machines, following predetermined strategies that left little room for improvisation. Human forces could gain advantages by using unconventional tactics that forced the enemy to adapt beyond their programming. The first major battle occurred when the Council's advance force encountered Earth's outer defensive perimeter near the asteroid belt. Admiral Parker commanded the human fleet from her flagship, the hastily converted battleship USS Liberty. The engagement would test whether human determination could overcome alien technological superiority. The Council's advance force consisted of 50 warships led by Subcommander Kethmore, a veteran officer who had never faced serious resistance. His ships approached the asteroid belt expecting to sweep aside any human defenses with minimal effort. The reality proved far more challenging than he had anticipated. Human forces had prepared the asteroid belt as a defensive maze, using mining charges and improvised weapons to create a chaotic battlefield that favored smaller, more maneuverable vessels. The Council ships found themselves navigating through debris fields while facing attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. Captain Morrison commanded a squadron of converted mining vessels that had been equipped with salvaged alien weapons. His ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking at Council vessels and then disappearing into the asteroid field before the enemy could respond. The strategy was working, but at a terrible cost in human lives. The battle raged for 6 hours as both sides adapted their tactics to the unique environment. Council ships began to coordinate their attacks more effectively, but human forces responded by becoming even more unpredictable. Several human captains deliberately sacrificed their vessels to destroy larger alien warships. Commander Kethmore found himself facing a tactical situation unlike anything in his military experience. The humans fought with a desperation and creativity that his training had never prepared him for. When conventional weapons failed, they used ramming attacks, improvised explosives, and even debris as weapons. The turning point came when Captain Sarah Williams of the USS Horizon made a decision that shocked both sides. Her ship was heavily damaged and surrounded by Council vessels, but instead of surrendering, she initiated a controlled reactor overload. The explosion destroyed her ship along with 3 Council warships and damaged several others. The sacrifice of the USS Horizon and its crew created a brief opening in the Council's attack formation. Admiral Parker immediately ordered all remaining human ships to concentrate their fire on the damaged alien vessels. The coordinated assault succeeded in forcing the Council advance force to retreat, but the victory came at a devastating cost. Half of Earth's defensive fleet had been destroyed or disabled, and hundreds of human lives had been lost. The surviving ships limped back to Earth's orbit, where repair crews worked frantically to prepare for the next attack. Everyone knew that the main Council fleet would arrive soon. The most surprising development occurred during the battle's aftermath. Several Council ships that had been damaged but not destroyed simply stopped fighting. Their crews sent surrender signals to the human fleet, an action that had never occurred in galactic military history. The concept of surrender to an inferior force was completely alien to Council doctrine. Dr. Amy Foster was assigned to communicate with the surrendering alien crews. What she discovered changed everything about humanity's understanding of the galactic situation. The alien soldiers were not fanatical warriors, but ordinary beings who had been forced into service by the Council's authority. The surrendering aliens revealed that many Council species had been conquered and enslaved, just as the Council now threatened to do to humanity. The tribute system was maintained through fear and tradition rather than genuine loyalty. The human example of saying no had inspired these beings to question their own servitude. Commander Veltar received reports of the surrenders with growing alarm. In centuries of military service, he had never encountered soldiers who abandoned their posts rather than fight to the death. The humans seemed to possess some quality that made other species willing to defy Council authority. The news of alien surrenders spread throughout the galaxy faster than the Council could suppress it. On worlds across the Empire, subjugated populations began to realize that their oppressors were not invincible. The humans had proven that Council forces could be defeated and that resistance was possible. High Arbiter Zexfil demanded immediate reports from the front lines, but the news continued to worsen. The human resistance was inspiring defections throughout the Council's military forces. Some ships were refusing orders, while others were actively joining the rebellion. The situation was spiraling beyond control. As the main Council fleet prepared for the final assault on Earth, Commander Veltar found himself questioning orders for the first time in his career. The humans had shown him something that he had never seen before: the power of choice. For the first time, he wondered what would happen if he simply said no. The massive Council fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a storm cloud blotting out the stars. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching as 200 warships formed battle formations around his flagship. The sight should have filled him with confidence, but instead he felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. High Arbiter Zexfil's final transmission to the fleet was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship could hear the Council's ultimatum. The humans would be given one last chance to surrender unconditionally, and if they refused, Earth would be reduced to ash as an example to the galaxy. The message was clear and brutal in its simplicity. President Daniel Hayes received the Council's ultimatum in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by his military advisors and the leaders of Earth's remaining defenses. The alien message demanded immediate surrender within 6 hours, or Earth would face complete destruction. The president listened to the translation and then did something that surprised everyone present. He laughed. The sound was not bitter or desperate, but genuinely amused. President Hayes looked around the room at the faces of his advisors and spoke in a voice filled with quiet determination. He explained that the Council still did not understand what they were dealing with. They thought that threats of destruction would make humans abandon their principles, but they were about to learn otherwise. Admiral Lisa Parker reported that Earth's remaining defenses were ready for the final battle. The planet's orbital stations had been converted into weapons platforms, and every available ship had been positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. The human fleet was outnumbered 10-1, but they had advantages that the Council could not comprehend. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the rebuilt USS Endeavour from the center of the human formation. His ship had been repaired and upgraded with salvaged alien technology, making it more powerful than any vessel in Earth's fleet. More importantly, his crew had gained experience fighting the Council's forces and knew how to exploit their weaknesses. Dr. Amy Foster worked frantically to maintain communication with the alien defectors who had joined the human cause. More Council ships were arriving at Earth, but many contained crews who were questioning their orders. The word "no" had become a virus spreading through the enemy fleet, undermining their unity and resolve. The battle began when President Hayes transmitted humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. Once again, the message was simple and direct, broadcast across all frequencies to ensure that every being in the galaxy could hear it. The President's words carried the weight of human history and the promise of human resistance. We will not surrender. We will not kneel. We will not abandon our freedom to those who demand it without earning it. Our answer remains the same: no. The response triggered immediate action from both fleets. Commander Veltar ordered his ships to advance on Earth's defensive positions, but he noticed something disturbing about his fleet's formation. Several ships were lagging behind, their crews apparently reluctant to engage the human forces. The defections were spreading faster than he could control. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as hundreds of ships engaged in the largest battle in galactic history. Human forces used every advantage they could find, turning the orbital environment into a maze of debris and energy weapons. The Council's superior technology was countered by human creativity and desperate courage. Captain Morrison led his squadron in a series of coordinated attacks against the Council's command ships. The humans had learned to target the aliens' communication systems, disrupting their ability to coordinate their forces. Without central control, the Council fleet began to fragment into smaller groups that could be defeated individually. Dr. Rachel Murphy's technological innovations proved crucial to the battle's outcome. Her team had developed weapons that could penetrate Council shields and armor, giving human forces the ability to damage even the largest alien warships. The technology was crude compared to Council standards, but it was effective and constantly improving. The tide of battle turned when something unprecedented occurred. The Council ship Righteous Fury, commanded by Captain Nextall, suddenly stopped firing on human vessels and began attacking other Council ships instead. The captain broadcast a message across all frequencies, declaring that his crew would no longer serve the Council's tyranny. The defection of the Righteous Fury triggered a chain reaction throughout the Council fleet. Ship after ship abandoned their attack on Earth and either withdrew from the battle or joined the human cause. Commander Veltar watched in horror as his carefully organized fleet disintegrated into chaos and rebellion. High Arbiter Zexthal arrived at the battle aboard his personal dreadnought, the Galactic Authority, accompanied by the Council's most elite forces. The massive ship was larger than any vessel in the human fleet, armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities. The High Arbiter intended to end the rebellion personally. The arrival of the Galactic Authority rallied the remaining loyal Council forces, but it also inspired the human defenders to new heights of determination. Captain Morrison led a desperate assault on the massive dreadnought, knowing that destroying it would cripple the Council's ability to maintain control over the galaxy. The battle for the Galactic Authority became a symbol of the entire conflict. Human ships swarmed around the massive alien vessel like insects attacking a giant, using speed and maneuverability to avoid its devastating weapons. Many human vessels were destroyed, but each sacrifice weakened the dreadnought's defenses. The climax came when the crew of the Galactic Authority itself began to mutiny. The ship's own officers, inspired by the human example and tired of serving an oppressive system, turned against High Arbiter Zexthal. The internal rebellion paralyzed the dreadnought's operations and left it vulnerable to human attack. Captain Morrison's final assault on the Galactic Authority was supported by dozens of defecting council ships. The combined fleet overwhelmed the dreadnought's defenses and forced it to surrender. High Arbiter Zexthal was captured alive, his crystalline form flickering with colors that represented defeat and humiliation. The surrender of the Galactic Authority marked the end of the Council's military power. Across the galaxy subjugated, worlds rose in rebellion as news of the human victory spread. The tribute system collapsed as species after species declared their independence from Council rule. Commander Veltar found himself commanding a fleet that no longer existed. Most of his ships had either defected or withdrawn from the battle. He made the decision that would have been impossible before encountering the humans. He surrendered his remaining forces and asked to join the rebellion against the Council. President Hayes addressed the galaxy from the Oval Office, his words broadcast to every world that had been touched by the Council's tyranny. He spoke of freedom, self-determination, and the right of every species to choose their own destiny. The message was simple but powerful. No being should be forced to serve another without consent. The aftermath of the battle saw the collapse of the Galactic Council and the birth of a new interstellar civilization. The galaxy began to reorganize as a confederation of free worlds, with Earth serving as the symbol of resistance and hope. The word "no" had become the foundation of a new galactic constitution. In the years that followed, historians would debate the factors that led to humanity's victory over the Council. Some pointed to technological innovations or military tactics, while others emphasized the power of human determination. But Dr. Foster, who had witnessed the entire conflict, knew the real answer. The humans had won because they understood something that the Council had forgotten. Freedom is not given by authority, but claimed by those brave enough to demand it. The single word that had changed everything was not just a refusal, but a declaration of independence that echoed across the galaxy. The word that had shaken the stars was simply and eternally no.